The Initiative for Heritage Conservation is a charity that aims to promote best practice in heritage management through training and research. And so digitization and 3D laser scanning and photogrammetry is a very good practice, as I will show you, and is something that we are very interested in, and is something where we would actually like to devote quite a lot of our time and resources, because it's a very useful tool, as you will see. So, a challenge would be, because there are many uses of digitization, and we'll go through them through this presentation, a challenge would be how do we manage to digitize all of cultural heritage? Okay, this sounds like an impossible task. In fact, it is an impossible task. But we have to find solutions that are asymmetrical for our asymmetrical task. So you need to find some kind of solution which has to be crowd-based. It has to be something that everybody does, because cultural heritage is growing by the day, cultural heritage is being discovered all the time, and so on and so forth. So this is what we are working towards. There is a ready-made platform called Ushahidi. Ushahidi is a platform that was made for managing multiple crises at the same time in real time. And so, for example, you had big earthquake in Haiti, big earthquake that meant a lot of buildings destroyed, a lot of pillaging, sickness breaking out, and all of that was in real time. So Ushahidi created a platform that you can basically combine the photo of your camera, of your phone, the GPS of your phone, and a database, together with a crowd map that I will show you later. So we worked with Ushahidi to adapt it for something less urgent, but equally important for a crowd solution. And so you can take the picture of whatever you think is important, put the title, put a description, then you tick many entries in a very long list of categories, which include type of material, date, etc., the date of the building. Then you put, the date is automatically inserted, and so are the coordinates. And so you can have category, this is building, it's stone, and it's classical. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And that would take your entry to a crowd map, and an administrator that would be approved to work on this. And the administrator would see your entry and then would say this is wrong or right, and they will adapt your entry. They might actually move the coordinates to make them more accurate. They might change the categories. They can do anything they want, basically. But because you've already entered it, it's so much easier. And also for a lot of things, they don't need to do that, because even the approximate region or area, even if your GPS is 50 meters, let's say, inaccurate, it's still quite accurate for you to work with it. And so this is what the administrator would see. These are the different categories. You probably can't see this, but I can. So then you would have dots on a map, and you would be able to decide what do you want to see at any one time. So if you have 50,000 dots in a map, you say, okay, I want to see all the buildings that are classical. And so it would show you all the dots on that map. And it's the same logic. I want to see all the demonstrations taking place in Haiti now, and I want to see pictures of them so that I can actually send riot police, or I can send whatever. So this is actually really important. Pillaging, sickness, fire, whatever. So it's the same principle that we're following. And so you'd be creating crowd maps. So, okay, so this is the very, very first recording. And obviously some of that heritage will be very important. And you will not be able to just be satisfied just by the fact that you've got a point on the map plus 1, 2, 3 pictures. That's just not good enough. So we need something more detailed. We will need a three-dimensional model of something. And there are two main technologies to do that. One is photogrammetry and the other is 3D laser scanning. So 3D laser scanning is extremely accurate, not always as detailed, okay? So not as many points per centimeter. And it's very expensive and very time consuming. Photogrammetry is faster, cheaper, more widely available. It may have more detail, but it actually has less accuracy. And the distortion of the camera, no matter how much you correct it, it will always be inaccurate in comparison to the laser scanner. So depending on what you need it for, and for what we need it for, photogrammetry is not a satisfactory solution all the time, only for some of the applications. We need a combination of the two technologies for higher accuracy and higher detail. So this is a 3D point cloud produced by many different stops. This aerial photo was never taken from the air. It was produced by many different stops of a laser scanner. In fact, the map is much, much more yellow now because there have been 260 stops after 1.5 months of work in Elefsina, which we did for the Ministry of Culture. And it is now recorded that we're actually handing this in this week. So this was a collaboration with our partners that I'll show you later on. And so these points are extremely accurate and georeferenced, not as detailed as some photos would be. And this is with true color, again the same aerial map that you basically have created because of multiple stations on the stops. Laser scanner, you move it further down, it takes a bubble of measurements. You move it further down, it takes another bubble of measurements, and then you try to join these together so you can create a three-dimensional map of dots, millions of dots. This file is 110 gigabytes of dots. Okay, it's very heavy. And sometimes, if you're just interested in an area, this is Westgate, Canterbury, you can do exactly the same thing. And you have the luxury of staying there for some time and taking it in very high accuracy, very high detail. But this is not, again, you really need the photograph unless you have a lot of time in your hands for your laser scanner. So this is a very rudimentary thing that you can be doing. So first step could be using photogrammetry, and then for things that you need more detail on, you use laser scanning, or both. This is a free software that Google provides. In fact, it probably doesn't name that SketchUp anymore. It used to be SketchUp. But basically, with 2 pictures or even 3 pictures, you can have some approximate view of how it is in 3D. And this is what Google has been using. If you go to Google Earth, and if you go to any big cities like New York, you will see that they have 3-dimensional models of all the big buildings. Don't know if you've seen that. And they've been using something like that, which is fast, free, and easy to do as long as you take the pictures in the right way. Okay, so we need, however, many hands. It is very difficult to do this in such a grand scale without hands. And for hands, we need skills, because even photogrammetry, which is actually quite straightforward and quite easy in comparison to laser scanning, is a skillful job. There are probably in this room 3 people, I can see 4 people, that may know how to do photogrammetry and use photogrammetric software. And so 4 people amongst a group of 100 heritage managers is just not enough. Okay, so we just need skills. And so for that we have created a digitization summer school with these partners. The Center for Advanced Spatial Technology, which is whom I'm replacing, Jackson Cothran, is the head of that in the University of Arkansas. Leica Geosystems, Rapidform, and various other actually software companies, and funding from several of the Greek foundations and Fulbright. So this summer school is really trying to train current and future heritage managers in these technologies. So this is one solution, but our solution is still not good enough, because these people will need to train others before we actually can scale the effect, because 10 people a year is not good enough. So we really need a few thousand a year. And to reach that stage, we need quite a lot of online courses. So that's what we're working on. Whilst we're doing it, we're also scanning and doing photogrammetry, and this is what this product is from. So after 3 seasons of summer schools in Elefsina, we completed the archaeological site at an accuracy below 1 millimeter and a detail below 1 centimeter for the whole site, and that's why it's 110 gigabytes. So this can then be used for many other things, and we'll get there. So yes, there are quite a lot of students, but then you really need to open it up. Local communities, archaeologists need to understand what the technology is, and so you need these open days. This is the old equipment that we were using. We still have this scanner. No, it's there. The one top left. That scanner was then the best in the market when we started. It could take a centimeter detail, millimeter accuracy, 300 meters away. So we could actually capture quite a lot of the town of Elefsina quite easily as well, which we didn't. And then these are the cameras. This is a GPS. And this is a phase scanner. Now, these two are basically one, into one scanner, 2 different technologies. So I'm just showing you a point cloud that has not been cleaned. So this is a point cloud that includes trees, it includes houses, antiquities, and it includes some things like this light green here in very high density, and other things that are in not such high density. And that's why you need to move your scanner from place to place, and you need to couple it with photogrammetry as well. And then you have some big movable objects like trees, and trees, as you know, move because of the air, and so having them in your point cloud is not particularly helpful in many ways, because they make your point cloud inaccurate. And then when you try to make it more and more accurate, these trees pose a problem, because if a leaf moves by 1 millimeter, you've lost your millimeter accuracy. Okay, so you need to clean them, and it's a laborious process. It takes a long time, a lot of man hours, and we need to get rid of that, of these man hours. Okay, so what this means, and again, this is from laser scanning. This means that you can actually look at locations, antiquities, heritage, and have extremely accurate measurements. It means that you can actually do quite a lot with that material. So you've saved the heritage digitally, but then you need to also make sure that other things work for the heritage managers. So conservation is a key issue. Just to briefly explain, this is the decay of a building, okay? This, let's say, is an earthquake. And then the building is abandoned somewhere here. Okay? In fact, you might say, let's start another way. Let's say that the building is abandoned here. Okay? My house is abandoned here. And then weather is slowly eroding it. Then at some point, the roof falls, and I have a big spike in the destruction of that building. The erosion continues, and then at some point, there is so little protection, the roof has fallen completely, then the decay is completely accelerated, and then it's buried underground, okay? And then it's stable again, okay? So underground, it's stable, okay? Okay, so if you had a conservation program, you would be able to stabilize the situation and not make it worse, okay? If you don't have a conservation program, you are stuffed, okay? This is a big problem, because the biggest distraction for the history of the building, when you don't have a conservation program, will be excavation, okay? Excavation is the worst thing you can do to a building once it's been covered by the ground. If you do a conservation program, but you don't maintain it, the degradation continues. So you need continuous conservation. This is a challenge. It's very expensive. You need preventive conservation. You need all sorts of equipment. You need all sorts of human resources, etc., etc. So how does the digital 3D model, how can it help us potentially? First of all, we can map conservation needs. Mapping conservation needs on the three-dimensional should be much more accurate than doing it in the two-dimensional. So this is a good example of a conservation map made by the University of Pennsylvania in Rome, and you can see different types of weathering, right? Different types of weathering on this arch. And so, however, this building is ideal for that kind of thing because it is fairly two-dimensional, so it's got flat surfaces and you can do that. But in most buildings, most statues, most heritage is not two-dimensional. It's rounded, it's been weathered in all places, and it's got various different other views. So how do you make this line here of the light blue and the dark blue, this border, how do you make it continue around the corner? Difficult if you don't have the three-dimensional model. Okay? So we should be able to identify a way to do this. So I'm going to show you some pictures that normally I would be able to move this. This is a room of a Roman villa in the backside of the archaeological site, just there. Okay? And these are different types of weathering, the different colors, and you can actually turn it around and see them. Okay? This also means, and these are different types of weathering again, and it's a different view of the same room. I just had to take 2 pictures because otherwise my PowerPoint would be impossible to load in this computer. Okay, so if I have done this, then I can, it's a software problem after that, because then if I want to calculate how much surface of alveolar weathering I need to be, or air weathering, I need to be curing, and I know how much materials I need approximately, how many man-hours I need approximately. If it tells me that this is a few hundreds of thousands of square meters of alveolar weathering around the archaeological site of Elefsina, then I know how many people I need, how many materials I need, approximately. And therefore, how do I project manage to do this efficiently? Approximately, again, but much better than done at the moment. Okay, this is the expertise of Jack Cothran. Jack Cothran is nowadays a historic forensic photogrammetrist. And what this does is, there are a lot of old pictures of things, okay? let's say there is an old picture of the Telestirio in Elefsina. There are old pictures of Telestirio of Elefsina because the Elefsina site has been photographed from the beginning of the 20th century and then again in the middle of the 20th century, and we could photograph it now. Now, the problem with old photos is that we do not know what was the camera that took the picture. Big problem. So how do we create a three-dimensional model that is accurate? How do we make photogrammetry with old photos? This is a problem. So forensic photogrammetry, historic photogrammetry for our field, is the field whereby you reconstruct the properties of the camera that took the picture and the distance from the item so that you can create as an accurate 3D model as possible. This is a skill that was developed in the Cold War. Jack was working for the Air Force, where you had a local newspaper somewhere in Russia showing a new aeroplane or a new missile. And that was the only evidence you had. You didn't know what was the distance, what's the size, so you had to guess. And you had to create a 3D model of something that you didn't know where it was taken, how it was taken, and what was the camera. So that's really what historic photogrammetry does. But once you have corrected that, and once you have got a picture that is comparable to a modern picture, then you should be able to see its degradation within 100 years. And you should be able to project the degradation to the future, to the next 100 years. So you should be able to say, show, and prevent. You can show to your donors, you can show to your government, this item is going to be completely destroyed in 100 years if you don't do something now. I can predict that, and I can show you how I can predict that. Okay. So heritage managers are people who have studied archaeology, art history, and so on, usually, and they don't work very well with three-dimensional models. Okay? That's part of our challenge. We have people, human resources, we can't convince everyone to work with three-dimensional models, and we need to provide them very accurate two-dimensional things like maps, okay? Because people, no matter how many three-dimensional models you give them, and this will be the case with this one, we will not be expecting that they will immediately change their practices and start using the three-dimensional model. That's impossible. So you need to provide traditional solutions that are better, more efficient than before. And so one of the things that we're doing, and I'll show you further down, is we created a line map from our 3D point cloud. Sounds completely counterintuitive. However, we did that, and we found that our two-dimensional map, that was not extremely detailed, it was produced within a day or two, once you had the three-dimensional model, was by 2 meters accurate at various occasions, more accurate, 2 meters more accurate than the current maps that Travlos made, great architect, by hand. Okay? And that was because there were many maps, one next to another, that were all hand-drawn with theodolites and with traditional equipment. And if it was 5 centimeters wrong, each map, then if you have 100 maps, then suddenly you find yourself with a 5-meter inaccuracy. Okay? This is a huge problem because if you're actually going to make a new path through the archaeological site and you give them the traditional map and you don't give them the three-dimensional model or at least the two-dimensional corrected map, then they might go out of budget by a few hundreds of thousands because these things are expensive. Okay. So then we have rescue excavations. Rescue excavation is a very common thing that the heritage manager does in the old world. All the time you find buildings, you dig up for foundations, and usually you find something. Okay? So when you find something, how do you record it? Because usually it's going to be destroyed. So 3D model is the ideal solution for that, a very accurate 3D model. And if you had a 3D model from this that was destroyed and 3D model from that was destroyed or covered up, and then you are digging in between, you already know what to expect. So you can actually predict what's going to come when you're looking at your rescue excavation. And in fact, you can actually predict that you don't need to worry about it because there is nothing there. So you can actually skip that one and go to the other one that's more important. Usually heritage managers have to follow multiple rescue excavations at any one time. I have a student in Crete that has to follow more than 50 rescue excavations at any one time because she's managing half of the county of Heraklion. County of Heraklion has got more archaeological sites than the whole of North America. So it's an enormous challenge. Okay, so we need to have a structure where things are going to be displayed. And there is some good work that has been done by World Monuments Fund and the government of Jordan with the Getty Conservation Institute. But we think that this is not dynamic enough and is not allowing heritage managers and experts in 3D laser scanning, conservation or other fields to actually enrich it all the time. So we propose a solution that is not visible. We propose a solution that is already there. So use current Google Maps, Bing Maps, or whatever with GIS. So this is the map, and this is GIS, and basically try and export as much information as possible as a platform for you to view more things. So then you have 3 dots here, and you press on one of these dots, and you find a flat 2-dimensional map. Okay, so that's the Roman villa that we were looking at earlier. And this map shows you some basic things, but again, it might not be entirely useful. And what you need from there is further depth. You might need the conservation map. You might need other things. This is the line drawing that I told you about earlier. Okay? And this is TrueView. So this is the next layer. TrueView is something that's freely available. Once you've scanned it, you can upload your point cloud on TrueView, and this means that anyone can see what that scanner, when it was placed in that location there, can see. And so you can turn it around, take pictures, communicate things, write on it, communicate what you wrote on it with someone else, and so on. So this already exists, okay? This is all existing technology. We're not talking about anything that is extraordinary. We're not talking about something that is not possible, okay? And then after that, you can have links to more specialized documents whereby you see, as I said, the conservation map or measurable models that you might want to download. And these might be heavy. You might need to wait for the internet to download it. And this is more specialized. But we can do all the 3 first steps quite easily. Okay? And that's the same. Okay, so at the moment, research on archaeology is done, or heritage is done on the spot or in libraries. Okay. What happens is when you actually try to make original research that has not been published before, if you really need to check your data, you really need to go to the site. This is very important. Okay, so you have a heritage manager here, and it's a very important site. There are many researchers working on that. If we had a conference on the archaeology of Eleusis, we would have more people in the audience. Okay? So this may be a general conference on heritage management, and it will still concentrate fewer people than the site of Eleusis itself. Okay? And what do? You have to wait for your bureaucracy to go through. The heritage manager has to wait for a very long time until other people who have been working have finished their work so that others can go, because human resources are challenged. And a heritage manager, who's one, cannot really be looking after a site, researchers, and 50 rescue excavations. It is impossible. Okay? If you have the TrueView, however, you can go online with a code that the heritage manager gives you, and anyone from anywhere can work on it. In fact, people can have a conference on it and talk about it online and record things with exact coordinates that are more than a millimeter accurate. Okay, so you can actually really progress research with this kind of thing. And this is what you can see in a true view. And you can zoom in and out. If I did that, it would crash my PowerPoint. But you can do that with just about any computer if you are patient enough. And you can click all these other dots and move to the next station where you can be seeing things zooming in and out. So this is the telesterion of Elefsina. Okay. And we need to be able to make things available to the public. So to educate, so as to potentially create income for sites, for local communities, and for a large-scale digitization project. And this is what people in the Foundation for the Hellenic World, there is George here? Yes. Have been working on. I think this is an old version of what they have been working on. I don't know if this is still around. It's still around. Okay, so they've made an effort to create a three-dimensional experience. And it's a really great product because you can actually really be walking around, feel like how it is to be walking around a whole town. Okay? Okay, so, however, these models are wildly inaccurate. Okay? Wildly inaccurate. Why? Because they've been picked up by reconstructions who were done as paintings, and with software like the one I showed you earlier on, like SketchUp, they've made, nowadays more sophisticated than that, but they've made three-dimensional models that were not based on the real thing. They were just based on a drawing, a line map, a publication, etc., which, as we said already, these are inaccurate. So you need ideally to be presenting your three-dimensional reconstructions on the accurate three-dimensional model that you have already got in great accuracy. Can we do that little film? Okay, so this is augmented reality. This is something that happens a lot nowadays. And this is a paper model of a town with a phone that is looking at it and is projecting on the white paper model of the town, is projecting the town. Colors, cars, advertising, etc. Can you find it? This is old software, it's not new. This is the model that it is based on. This is the paper town, and the phone is recognizing the model and is projecting, that's it, and is projecting color to your model. Now imagine, and that's actually happening already, imagine that you are in the Acropolis. There is a company that does that called Acroptilis, Moptil. Imagine there is, you've got a tablet and you're looking up the Acropolis and it's projecting you all the original colors, it's projecting you all the original stones as they were, it reconstructs your building. In fact, you should be able to, that's not there yet, but you should be able to press the button and say, how does it look in the 3rd century? How does it look in the 5th century? In fact, it should be possible, and it hasn't happened yet, that some ancient guy comes up to you and says, follow me, let me show you that. Okay? So, can you imagine, once you have that as a standard, in fact, Moptil has done that for 5-6 archaeological sites in Greece. There are other companies coming up as well. There is a company called Diadrasys that has been doing models like that, has worked with medieval Heraklion, and so on and so forth. So imagine being able to have that technology with glasses or whatever, or just with your phone, and imagine then going back to a site where that technology does not exist anymore. Okay? So that site has just become dead again. Okay? So this is why it is actually quite urgent we work on this. Okay. So, physical reconstructions have been a fashion in archaeology for a very long time. In fact, there are whole organizations that are dedicated to the reconstruction of archaeological sites, physical reconstruction of archaeological sites. However, we do not know whether these reconstructions are accurate. We will never know. In fact, we do know that most of the reconstructions that have happened up to now are slightly inaccurate or wildly inaccurate. We do know that. One of the most famous reconstructions in Greece is the theater of Epidaurus. We do know that the theater of Epidaurus is not correctly reconstructed. Now, we do say, in principle, theater of Epidaurus and all other reconstructions are reversible. Yes, they are reversible. They do cost millions, of course, but they are reversible. Okay? They do cause a destruction, of course, but they are reversible. They do cause an ecological destruction, and they are reversible. So, this is a problem. And digital reconstructions, and I'm going to show you a very, very simple technology that doesn't include any of my augmented reality stuff, that has been working from the last century, and okay, I'm going through that. That's the Name Center created in Belgium. A way for you to visualize this San Salvador church by just going to that kiosk. Okay? That's very simple technology. You can do it with mirrors. You don't need digital technology for that. So once you have phones being able to do that for you, really the game has changed, because one reconstruction of one theater somewhere costs as much as the digital reconstruction of all the theaters. Okay, that's how much it is the difference. You can unify monuments. This is a statue of one of the two caryatids of the small propylea in Elefsina that the Greek government is not requesting back, right, to continue the discussion from before. That was illegally exported from the country. However, this finds itself in the Fitzwilliam Museum, this finds itself in the Elefsina Museum, all right? So both museums should be able to benefit the visitors, and benefit archaeology and the understanding of the monument by having digital technologies bringing these together in a 3D model. And then you can test various research questions. So you have the 3D model, you can find out, for example, how air flows in a building. This is what this machine has been analyzed as, airflow. Yeah, airflow is a common thing in architecture. Some of you are architects, but you can do that in ancient buildings. If you have the 3D model of them, if you have a 3D reconstruction, you can check airflow, and yes, you might be inaccurate, but you will still be able to say that, say, this room here cannot be a tannery, as it has been reconstructed, because the wind, the prevailing wind, flows that way, and you can have an airflow model showing that this stinking poo, dog poo used for tanneries, would be stinking all the way into the living quarters. So you can't have a tannery there, it's just a storeroom. It also would say that this is possibly a wine storage only for temporary reasons, because it's too hot. It's too hot to store wine there. But we can't say these things now because we don't have any airflow model. Okay, so even though you have only this information, you still would be able to do quite a lot with your airflow models. You can have light correction, I'm not going to show you. You can have all sorts of other things. You can delete the light from a site and then light it any way you like. Okay. And this is my last one. This poses a huge challenge. How do we create extremely accurate models, models that are good for conservation mapping, very big challenge, very fast? We don't have a lifetime to wait for this to happen, because by the time we're dead, the monuments will have degraded so much more, and we really need to make the most of them. In 5 years, sites that don't have a good model will not have good augmented reality. Okay? So augmented reality already exists in sites. In fact, Aphrodite Kamara, who was here yesterday, has worked with augmented reality with this Diadrasys company that is using one of our students as well. And so we need to combine technologies. We need to combine photogrammetry with laser scanning. So this is the vision regarding this, and this is a program that we have started with ETH in Zurich. So use drones to take pictures. So, okay, at the moment, as the technology stands, you can program a drone and tell the drone to go from A to B to C to D. The drone will automatically create a flight plan of going up and down, zigzagging the whole site, and taking pictures. There is software as we speak that will unify these pictures and will create a three-dimensional model. This model is accurate 6 centimeters, okay? So we're there, almost. Not good enough for conservation purposes, however. We need millimeter accuracy for conservation, because if your crack in the rock is going the wrong direction, it's bad. You can't really do with 6 centimeter accuracy. But then you can have that model, and then there is another problem, that the drones at the moment don't have a three-dimensional flight path. Now, in most heritage places, it's not flat, okay? The world is not a flat place. Iraq may be flat in many parts. England may be flat in many parts, but that's not what the world is like, certainly not Greece. When you have a two-dimensional flight path, then you have your, this is 20,000, but nowadays they're much cheaper. You have your multi-thousand equipment dead very quickly, okay? So the idea is, this is what it does, this is the three-dimensional model it creates. The idea is to cut the time of scanning and photogrammetry maybe 100%, maybe 99% if we can. So we want what we could do in a month and a half here in Elefsina to be able to do it in a day and a half. That's ideally what we would want to do. Because a month and a half for 10,000 archaeological sites in Greece, a lifetime is not enough. The world's millions and billions are not enough, okay? And then we're all dead and we don't know how to use it, right? But if it's a day and a half, if it's 2 days, if it's 3 days, then we can do 30,000 days, and we can have project manage the teams that do that. So ideally what you would have is a scanner on top of the site taking 1 scan or 2 scans, and that should take 1 hour, okay? So you merge the bubbles of points and you create a very rudimentary but extremely accurate three-dimensional model with your points. You would ideally, that's technology that doesn't exist, but all the elements exist, okay? You would insert that three-dimensional point cloud into the flight path program of the drone, and it would plan a three-dimensional path for itself to take photos. And then one by one, it would be sending its pictures in a bundling sort of way to the point cloud to be able to correct each picture according to the point cloud, but enrich the point cloud with its own points. So that is, all these things are software that does exist, but there is not one software that does it all, okay? So all these elements do exist. There is the software that automatically picks up one picture and corrects it according to the point cloud. The Cyclone software in Leica does that. There is a software, bundling software, Build Rome in a day. Google has done that, where they picked pictures from the internet and built Colosseum in 1 day. Okay. There is the flight planning software for the drones. It's just a matter of these softwares to be working together. But once you've done that, the drone will take another hour to scan take photos of a site the size of a Lefsina. Okay? So you need 6 times a flight of a drone. The battery will last 10 minutes. You'll change the batteries. So you can project manage that. That's pretty straightforward. And then you would leave the computer overnight to calculate all that. And hopefully you have a strong enough computer that the next day you'll have your model. But all these elements do exist. We're not talking about something that is new, revolutionary, or whatever. What is revolutionary is that this would cut our time from a month and a half to 1-2 days. And that would make a very big difference. So, as you can see, we can't do things on our own, and so we have to collaborate. And with that, I thank you.